All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show are Kate Clancy, Robin Nelson, Julienne Rutherford, and Katie Hinde. They are the co-authors of a new study on sexual harassment and assault of field scientists. You can find the study at plos1.org. Kate, Robin, Julienne, Katie, thank you all so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's begin by discussing where the idea for this study actually came from. I guess let's start with Kate. You're the main author of it. Tell us where the idea actually came from.
So where this came from is I've been a blogger around women in science issues for many years and go and give a lot of talks about it at various universities, and just ended up catching up with an old friend one night after giving one of these talks, and when asking her how things were going, and why she was having trouble completing her dissertation, she revealed that she had been sexually assaulted in the field. And of course, because of that, it was a real challenge for her to finish her dissertation because she was so often triggered by memories of it whenever she tried to do any of her research or analysis. From there, I met other people who were harassed in the field, and two of these individuals ended up writing pseudonymous blog posts for me at Scientific American. From there, I was invited to give a talk on ethics of research or field site management. And by the time it blew up to that point where I was being invited to actually give talks on something for which I had only collected stories from individuals, I realized something a lot more rigorous had to be done. And that's when I contacted Julienne, Robin, and Katie as people who are exemplary scientists themselves. And I knew that together we could do a really good team-based effort to do more of a quantitative and qualitative assessment of what's really going on at field sites.
Yeah, and the findings you had are I mean, I'd say they're shocking, but I mean, that's like if you look at the rest of society, this is kind of par for the course in a lot of areas, but it's really, really horrible. So tell us, what are some of the main part? Like, so I guess let's start by talking about how you actually conducted the survey itself and reached out to different field scientists to actually like find out like the method behind this. Who did you actually reach out to?
I can answer it, but I'm also trying to give my colleagues a chance to answer because we worked on this all together.
Let's get everybody here. Let's have Robin take this.
So one thing that we did was that we reached out to scientists via social media and also sent out notifications to different scientific professional organizations through either Facebook pages or their social media contacts to let participants in these professional organizations know that the study was ongoing, where they could find the study, and that their participation in the study would remain anonymous. And so through a web of social networking and also professional conferences, folks were aware that the study was ongoing, the timeline of the study, and who we are and that they could contact us if they had questions about their participation in the study. And this allowed us to actually gain a pretty wide network of participants. And initially we'd begun the study with anthropologists and archaeologists in mind, and we're very soon made aware that we should extend it to all researchers that participate in field science. So our final participation, we have researchers from over 30 disciplines. So it's pretty broad-reaching in terms of folks whose research is predicated upon going to the field, leaving their home institution and going to the field to collect data.
So let's discuss some of the actual questions that you asked them. I mean, because like a lot of them are pretty straightforward here. Julienne, talk about some of the actual content of the survey itself.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to know was kind of what the depth of experience in the field setting was. So we asked questions about how many field sites a respondent had worked at. We asked about their kind of professional status at the time of particular experiences. We wanted to know if our respondents were, experiencing these various climates early in their career or later in their career. Certainly, basic sort of demographic breakdown. But then we asked questions about, were respondents aware of, had they witnessed or heard of inappropriate sexualized or gendered comments, jokes, jokes about cognitive differences between men and women. Were they aware, or had they seen inappropriate physical interactions? And then we asked sort of the more sort of personal level experience, if respondents themselves had experienced those. So those the difference in those questions was sort of to assess a general perception of field environments and then specific experience of those field environments. And it was we used our language based on sort of already formalized language in literature and in the legal literature about what constitutes sexual harassment and assault, as opposed to asking a direct question about, were you yourself harassed or assaulted? Using that language requires people to name their experience in ways that it can be very traumatizing for respondents. So we use language that was well established in the literature to get at those sorts of experiences.
And so when you actually ask these questions, let's actually talk about some of the results, because the percentages of people who had either witnessed or been told of sexual harassment is really, really high. Katie Hinde, tell us a little bit about some of the actual findings here.
Yeah, absolutely. What we found was that among our 666 respondents, hundreds of them had personally experienced situations in which they were targeted for inappropriate comments, sexual jokes, jokes about differences in the cognitive abilities of men and women, and a number of statements that constitute harassment or chilly climate within the workplace of a sexual nature. And when you break that down into percentages, which is tricky because, people are self-selecting to take the sample, so you've got hundreds of people, it was about 70% of the women in our study and 40% of the men. Wow. who responded to our survey. And that's for harassment. And those numbers are actually very consistent with the numbers that you get in a variety of different settings. So some comparable research is looking at doctors during their medical residencies get very comparable numbers for harassment. We also had dozens of people that experienced sexual assault. And this is situations in which their body was physically touched in ways that they did not welcome, that they felt were either that they couldn't fight back or it wasn't safe to fight back, or they did fight back, or, any way in which somebody else took away a respondent's agency over their body in a sexual manner. And this was about 20% of the women and around 5% of the men. Now, those are just, the percentages, and but they really let us know that these are appreciable numbers of people that are experiencing it. And given that the White House this spring launched their One Is Too Many campaign, that anybody that experiences this, it's too many. But even more interestingly, and I think very informative, was we asked who the perpetrators were, and who when was this happening in people's careers. And what we found is overwhelmingly for both men and women that these experiences were happening when they were trainees. So early in their career development, when they were undergraduates or graduate students or postdocs, when you're very, very professionally vulnerable, and that professors were much less likely to indicate that this had happened when they were professors. And also an important takeaway is that the source of the behavior, so the perpetrators, were different for men and women in our survey. Men reported that they were much more likely to be harassed or assaulted by individuals that they perceived as being peers at the field site. So people at their same professional level. Women indicated that about half of the harassment experiences and half of the assault experiences were coming from individuals that they perceived as being above them in the professional hierarchy. And there's been a rich literature in sexual harassment research that indicates that the impacts of harassment from up the hierarchy are much greater than from peers or people unaffiliated with the professional setting. That these problematically erode psychological well-being, motivation for work, and job performance. And so it sets up a very negative potential feedback system, which contributes to individuals not being able to do their job as well or enjoy doing their job as well.